The worldwide coronavirus pandemic has brought with it public health crises, economic upheaval, and widespread uncertainty. The financial and emotional toll on many families is also enormous. People in many professions are working from home, or even worse, losing their jobs. Children are away from school for weeks, if not months. How have these quarantine measures affected family ties and intimate relationships? Are divorce rates and domestic violence on the rise because of the pandemic? And how extensive is social media usage reshaping our social life? To discuss these issues and more, I'm joined by He Jing, attorney from Anjie Law Firm, Elif Etas-Balas, licensed marriage and family therapist in the U.S., Mara Cavallo, founder and CEO of M Communications Group. That is our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Zhou Yue. Well, historically, epidemics, especially those involving quarantines, have placed a huge burden on economic and social lives, but also on intimate relationships. So let me start with our guests. He Jing, do you feel that your life has been affected in any way because of the quarantine?
I think everybody is affected, just to different degrees. We've been living this quote-unquote sheltered lifestyle for I think more than 60 days. It's everything happened after the Chinese New Year. I have a marriage and 2 working.
Well, it seems the connection is very stable with He Jing there. Let me ask Mario then. Mario, so you also been living in China, and quarantine is obviously something you cannot avoid. How has that affected your marriage, your family life in any way?
Well, it sure has. And, I'm very happy to say that in our case, it's made us have a stronger marriage and family together. And that's because we have to understand what makes a real marriage, an authentic marriage, work. And that is the idea that it's not all about romance and fun and games and happiness every day. Real life is a bit more sober than that. And deep down, the values which make it work are things like devotion and sacrifice. In the real world, I know for myself, for my family, when people say to me, what's important? And I say, well, my family and my devotion to my wife, to my son, and I also have a daughter back in the United States. Nothing is more important to me than that. That's my devotion as a person. Now, for me, that means identifying with who I am. That means I'm a man, I'm a husband, and I'm a father. And I'm devoted to those things, and everything else falls a distant second. So now, when a crisis comes along, what causes, let me say it to you this way, a crisis, or even getting rich, making $5 million or more, amplify who you are as a person. So they will amplify the values by which you live, for better or for worse, as they say.
And He Jing, earlier you didn't finish your narrative. How has that affected your life?
Yeah, I was saying that, this is my 23rd year anniversary for my marriage. I have 2 teenagers living together, 15 years old daughter and a 14 years old son, and the pets, 3 cats and 1 lizard. I think to some extent we are lucky, and we are able to live through this in the last 6 days, just sheltered life. Of course, there are stress and anxiety, mostly coming from the outside, right? Looking at the news and worry about what's going to come in ahead. Inside the home, I'm very proud and I'm very happy that what we've been creating together as a family. To be honest, I think lots of this quality of life depends on some smaller things. One thing I really enjoyed a lot is actually going out to buy groceries with my wife, especially in the beginning of the first half of February, right, when the situation is pretty tense. We pretty much just go out once every 3 or 4 days and do some shopping. that's actually create this is great intimacy, and coming back we cook meals together. And you know what? As a man, I got some very good kitchen appliance. I even cook cheesecake with my kids. That sort of things really. I mean, add some special things during this difficult time.
Well, I'm so glad that this epidemic has actually strengthened your marriage stories. But the problem is whether or not you are exception or rule, because according to the Global Times, it reported that in Xi'an and several other cities here in China, and they have seen a record high number of divorce requests in recent weeks. And some have even to turn down their appointments because there are so many. So why it is disrupting marriages in many families? This is not only the case in China. We see the similar trend in the United Kingdom and France. What happened?
I think it's probably expectations. For the couples, right? We have expectations for each other, and in the normal times, well, it's probably easier to manage. But in this troubled time, it's much harder. When the couples are living together, everybody have their own stuff to deal with. I mean, the potential worries about the work, about the client business, and the expectation about even about who's taking care of the housework. In my home, we do have upsets. Okay, it's not all this fun stuff. The upsets really always come from like, hey, who didn't do what? That's really about the expectations. That's something. It's easy to say that, but that destroys relationship.
And Mario, because I presume because couples have to live in close quarters for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and this is probably something they have not been experienced before because of this epidemic. And that added a lot of stress on their relationship.
Well, that's right. What I want to say is I want to add to what Mr. Wu said, or Attorney Wu said, which is regarding expectations. But actually it goes much deeper than that as to why the marriages are failing. It's a societal problem that began with the postmodern era, which began about 30 years ago into this excess neoliberalism that everything is okay and everything goes. And in the Western societies, I'm going to say UK, France, Italy to some degree, but especially UK and United States, the move went away from the idea that marriage, family together, the birth of a child is between a man and a woman. This is sacred. The marriage is sacred, and I mean that in the spiritual sense, whether it's Christian or Buddhist, doesn't make a difference. This is the devotion, and vocation is another great word. That's how a marriage is supposed to be treated. As soon as the society started getting away from that, in the United States, hey, there was no virus crisis, and the divorce rate skyrocketed there because they got away from marriage as the root of society. Then when the worst side of Western values started penetrating China, and including being able to make more money here in China, then what happened, of course, the divorce rate started rising here. People started thinking, oh, it's not necessary for us to stay together. We can get a divorce. Divorce becomes an option. When divorce becomes an option, society starts deteriorating, and we've seen that in the West, and now we're seeing it here in China. A crisis comes along and exacerbates that problem, but the problem is the fundamental underlying values which says, oh, it's okay to get a divorce.
So
when
you
in
are
fact,
saying
it's not okay to get a
there
divorce.
Are cultural factors and context behind the story on the surface. But to those who are struggling with their relationships, living in quarantine, what would you say to them? How can they cope with this new norm?
I would say I'm going to speak to the men. I'm a man. I'm going to speak to the men. I mentioned it to you earlier. You know what? I'll tell you what I say to my wife every day and what I say to my boy every day. Because we're under a lot of pressure over the last 6-8 weeks because we've been in our house together, right? Our boy, he's 9 years old. He's been out of school. I have to juggle all my work, which, again, I'm a media commentator. I'm very busy. I'm writing. I'm dealing with him at the same time. And my wife, she's working during the day at Alien Fuying Yuyan, the Roy Care Hospital, the maternity hospital, the international marketing department there. So she's gone all day long. So I'm playing entrepreneur, home dad, taking care of my boy. But you know what? Why is it okay? Even though we're in these tense moments, it is tough because we're, in that house together. But why is it okay? because the wife in the house knows the man is devoted, and the son in the house knows the man, his dad is devoted. They know this. They deep down know this, and this gives them a confidence, and it gives a solidity and a foundation to the marriage. So and then it comes in return. So when the tense moments come up in that quarantine, when you're all stuck in the house together, and they do come up, everybody understands they're not what's important. And that's how you get through it. You understand what's important is you're a family together, and that is an enormous, I want to say, benefit, and in a spiritual sense we say blessing, right?
And He-Jing, of course, the stress and anxiety because of the worry of this epidemic and the shrunken space within a household is adding to this problem. As a societal challenge, how should we take on this?
I think two things. I'll make it very simple. The first one is that no matter what the circumstances, we have to learn how to put the focus on the other side, on whether it's our marriage couples or our colleagues or even our boss, our clients. We have to keep thinking something about them. This actually is what I heard from one of my younger colleagues. They're actually getting married, and I was asking them. I say, what's your secret? In the middle of all this, you are still making this a big commitment. Everybody said that so many people are divorcing. What made you made a decision? And she was telling me that she said, well, you know what, our bonds are getting much stronger during this. One of the sources that he took care of me. He took care of the housework when I'm really in the middle of a lot of stress and doing a lot of work at my job. And then when he was down, I was taking care of him. So that's actually pretty bigger bonds. That's the first thing. The second thing is probably the old word, easy to say but very hard to do. That's to communicate. You have to. I think we have to let the other side, especially inside of marriage, let our couple, let the other side knows our world. Yesterday I was dealing with something quite difficult, a difficult decision, and my wife did not agree with me, and then I was not very happy. But after a few hours, I was actually saying to her, hey, honey, I figured out why I wanted to do that way. Here's why. 1, 2, 3. That's actually made some difference.
But it will eventually pass, and things will probably return to normal after some time. How do you think this experience could change our way of life, our way of communicating, and also maybe other choices for the future? He-Jing?
I think for our Chinese, we probably realize we don't need to go out too much for dinners. And we realize we should probably stay at home and spend more time, giving more time to our families. Our Chinese really, we're incredible, having the incredible love of our family. But we do so much work. We're so busy. But with this, I'm hoping that we realize, hey, we can slow down and then still get things done. And then the most important thing is really give ourselves a lot of time to our family.
Mario, what are the things that might have a change in your choices because of what you've been through this past 3 months?
What we've been through in the past 3 months, in our case, definitely, I'm going to say, whatever the state of your life is, a crisis is going to reaffirm what the state of what that is. It's going to reaffirm and strengthen whatever that is. So if there's weakness and conflict, then this crisis is going to come along and it's going to amplify that. If there's strength and devotion, this crisis is going to come along and amplify that. And that's what it's done for our marriage, for our family. However strong I knew that family was most important, this crisis just made me feel even more strongly that family is more important. Okay, that's great, and I'm very so happy to say that. Let's concern ourselves with the folks who are having a hard time. And again, I'm going to speak to the men. It's selfishness at its root. You don't need anything as a man. You just need to take care of your family. You don't need to go out. You don't need to chase other women. You don't need to go to massage parlors. You don't need to go sit in the bar with your buddies after work every night. You need to go home and take care of your wife and kids. Go do that for a few weeks, and you'll see the change in your wife, and you'll see the change in your children. That'll patch up your marriage. It's not China. It's every country. The crisis is going to bring you to look in the mirror. It's going to bring you to that face-to-face with the thing that's either going to make or break you. That's the point.
And there is another interesting angle to think about this, because COVID-19 has stopped major productions of condoms, and there probably will be shortages of that, but there is a surge in demand of condoms. And also people are saying maybe there's going to be a baby boom period after this is over. What is your take on this?
Sure.
Intimacy, right?
Sure.
Intimacy
Again,
probably,
happy marriages
more
please,
important.
Yeah,
I was just going to make the comment that people are talking about in 10 years, 20 years, we'll see all this corona babies or even quarantines, okay, in 20 years. And I mean intimacy. This is naturally in a sheltered life that people want more intimacy, and then this is something natural.
Meryl?
We're going to see the baby boom. The people, again, who are happy together, the crisis will affirm their togetherness. They'll be home, quarantined, they'll be intimate, and they're going to make more babies. Absolutely. It's going to happen. Yeah.
But there's other things that probably not so optimistic. That is, the research has found that there is a spike also in domestic violence during crises and disasters, which have similar features to what is happening right now. So women are in a vulnerable position in these circumstances when they're stuck with their man in the family, especially considering a lot of them are under stress. Mariel?
Thank you, Wuzhui, sorry. Yes, and this is part of why divorce happens, and we're on to the subject here of the character of a man, the deep character of a person. If a person has weaknesses in their character, they may be manifest out in many different ways. A person might be mild things would be like ignoring the family, and just when you're free, the man goes home and just wants to watch TV. And that's mild, and he's neglecting the family, but at least he's not hitting anyone. Then it gets worse. It could be a drinking problem, and then it gets worse, and it could be a violence and an abuse problem. And these are the things which will absolutely destroy a family. This domestic violence is very, very, very unfortunate, and without a question, the women are the victims of that. And well, I'm just going to say that last part.
But can we blame?
Very unfortunate.
But can we blame the epidemic for the spike in domestic violence and also opiate usage and alcohol consumption? Because people are nervous and anxious, so they do things that otherwise they wouldn't do.
No, weak people do things they otherwise wouldn't do, and strong people do things they otherwise wouldn't do. So people with weak character who are struggling in one way or another, and that's tough, by the way, they do opiates and drink more and hit their wives as their men. Strong men don't do that. Strong men exercise and meditate and read books and strengthen their minds. So they do good things in response. So you see, that's the difference in the two responses from all human beings, and the same goes for women as well.
Let's try to talk to Ella Artis-Ballas from a woman's perspective. Ella, we've been talking about the spike in domestic violence cases because of the epidemic. A lot of people are stuck at home. Have you noticed this trend? What do you think are the reasons behind this?
I've been fortunate enough to not really see this happening right now among my clients, but I'm not surprised that it might be happening elsewhere. So it's really unfortunate. I mean, the reasons why things like that happen have been tried to answered, by many different people with many different professionals, and I think the reasons, for me to explain here, we might need more time for that. I'd rather want to put forth my feelings about how I think it's so unfortunate, and I think this is a great time for us to really take a step back from these terrible habits and individually and societally just revise our thinking as it relates to how cruel we can be towards each other. And I hope that there's a silver lining in this pandemic. It's that we will reconsider those kinds of tendencies of hurting one another.
Another
Yeah.
social consequences of this pandemic is probably the loss of jobs. We were told that in America, more than 6 million people have applied for unemployment benefits, and a lot of stress will come from losing job. How would you suggest people to cope with the financial stress as well as their anxieties that they will no longer be having a job?
It's a really tough situation, and I would recommend that, first of all, if they are really if you're not making any money right now and they're not able to provide for their family and for themselves, I know for a fact that there's still parts of community who is coming together, at least in my city, to help out the ones that can't support themselves. So school districts, for instance, are still delivering food to households where kids are, they used to be on a meal plan when they were going to school. So these are wonderful things that I hope that people would reach out and seek help if they need these kinds of financial help. But more relationally and emotionally, as it relates to what I do, I think that they might be also facing loss of purpose and a loss of confidence as a result of not having their job and not being able to bring income. And I just would like to remind everybody that the executive function that allowed them to really be productive members of their society and make money and earn for their life and their loved ones' life,
and do you
it's
think
still there.
That will have a toll on the integrity of families, or maybe the other way around, the families will rally even closer together because of the financial difficulty? What will be the social outcome?
Honestly, that's what I've been seeing. I can only speak to what I've been seeing, and I am just so hopeful as of right now to see how this hardship, how this ordeal is really allowing people to get together and make the best of the situation.
And Mario, another thing is that it is very hard now for working parents to balance their roles as caretakers and also employees. Some of them have to struggle with doing both at the same time. How do you manage that, and can you empathize with those who may be having a harder time doing this?
Well, the answer
I sure
to how
can,
hard it is.
because I am one of those people myself. Very, very difficult, and I admit that. I confess that this is my, and I've told my best friends and even my wife, this is my #1 struggle. But this is relative to the amount of love that I pour out to my child. So I'm not saying it in a negative way, but I'm admitting this is my struggle. I have a 9-year-old boy who's your typical 9-year-old boy. They say, like the Energizer Bunny, right? They never run out of energy, and I need to keep him busy on an education track and on a play track and on a track of knowing that he's loved throughout the day while I'm doing all of the things that I need to do. And I constantly feel like I'm not doing a good enough job at that, right? I'm not doing good enough. So I'm working on it. I am seeking advice of other people. I'm reading articles. The best advice I recently got was sit down with my boy, and I did it, and make a chart and say, here's what we're going to do, and make him responsible. Say, so when you do 20 minutes of reading, then you come in and you put a star, and then you spend an hour playing,
have a new
and
routine.
Put a star. Each time you do, and then a new routine, and then put it on a chart, and then fill it out together.
Okay.
And when there's 4 stars, then mommy comes home and she sees it, and she's so proud of you. Things like that.
Elif, what are the American families been coping? How they are coping with this new reality that maybe their moms and dads are out of jobs and they have to take care of their kids and with no financial support?
Yeah, again, it's about really structure, and we've been kind of relying on the outside world to provide us with a structure. And now we have to be the ones in charge of really creating that structure and then maintaining it. So in the households, people are getting more and more acclimated to being in charge of that, and which might mean that, you know, they have strict boundaries between workspace in the house and also the living space in the house, and also as far as their relationship with their partners and their children, requiring a different kind of compassion and understanding in a situation like that. But so far, like I said, I've been really lucky to see that at least my clients have been dealing with this from a place of constructive thinking and taking this as an opportunity to really spend that time they've been wishing that they would with their family for the longest time.
And there is another reality that a lot of people have to adjust to, that is the extensive and non-stop media exposure about negative health consequences, bad news, every day in their face. It's similar like what happened after 9/11. So how will too much media exposure, especially to social media, create stress and even harm one's mental health?
So I mean, how is, like, it's immense, right? We've been seeing this even before a pandemic like that happened. So this just brings into the picture a certain kind of relational shift between us and our use of social media. Again, what I'm seeing is that people are really serious about their boundaries now. And they don't seem to really associate the positive euphoric feelings around their access to social media anymore. Social media now is, you know, one of the rare ways that we can get connected to the world. And even when we are trying to do something that has nothing to do with getting news, even those activities get interrupted by the bad news. So nowadays, I'm getting a lot of reluctance from people as far as going on social media is concerned. So I'm thinking, I wonder if this is going to change our habits and it's going to change our relationship with social media for the better. Whereas it really puts us in charge of deciding that, you know, this is a tool and what kind of tool that we want this to be.
And Mario, do you also set up boundaries between you and your social media so that in this new crisis you don't want to be too immersed with the negative messages?
Well, I don't have a choice, but on this subject, I want to mention how proud I am of my daughter. She's an adult, and it amazes me how she's told me so many times, because she's a metaphysical healer and a spiritual person and a healer of other people, and she protects herself from negative. She doesn't watch the news. She doesn't watch it, and there's a lot of other people out there who just, they won't turn on the news. Don't turn on the news. Don't read the newspaper, to protect yourself from the negativity. Now, which is a great idea, and that's protecting your psyche, protecting your emotions, protecting your spirit, protecting your mental space from the bombardment of the negativity, which is what today's media is. And this is self-respect. This is caring about yourself and respecting yourself. I want to do it as well, but I can't. Because I have to, because of my work, like being here with you, I have to look at the media every day, read it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mario, and thank you, Alev. Well, COVID-19 obviously is an overwhelming challenge, not only in society, but also in sitting rooms, bedrooms, kitchens, and everybody has to adjust. Thank you for watching this edition of Dialogue. I'm Zoe. Goodbye.